and their words haven't died. Don't melt too much into the universe, but be as solid and dense and fixed as you can. This what Henry and William said in the evening after 6. This was included in her ballads, where she did a lot of play with the whole tradition of ballad writing, and she works in the first stanza with the ballad rhyme that cried and died is a perfect rhyme, and then she gets fixed in 6. And of course, it's the poem is playing with the visual and the auditory. You only get the rhyme in the second stanza if you actually see the. No, you only get it if you hear it. If you see it, you don't see the rhyme. And then she's got the abbreviated William. Anyway, it's a really, the sources for this poem are truly extraordinary. Some of you may be familiar with the profoundly moving poem that she wrote after her mother's death, Sorrow Moves in Wide Waves, which you'll know is based on the Henry James letter to Grace Norton when he is consoling her after the death of a friend. And curiously, he uses part of that letter in this poem. So in the second stanza, the opening 2 lines are, or opening 2.5, don't melt too much into the universe, but be as solid and dense and fixed as you can. This is straight out of that letter from Henry James to Grace Norton, and a letter that's in a context that is very, very far from humorous, right? And also that line that he uses has perhaps an unconscious echo of Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto. All that is solid melts into air. So, you've got that kind of layered in there as well. Niedecker knew her Marx. And then the lumps in the mashed potatoes part comes from, and again, you put your mashed potatoes and Niedecker into a Google search, and up pops this. Actually, you don't. It's not the. If you put William James and Henry James and the mashed potatoes into the Google search, and you get this. And it's William James writing to his sister Alice James from Berlin in November 1867. I here send another commission. I definitely appoint by name my father, H. James Sr., author of Substance and Shadow, etc., to perform it, and solemnly charge all the rest of you to be as lions in his path, as thorns upon his side, as lumps in his mashed potatoes, until he do it, or write me nay. And the commission is to send by post Cousin's lectures on Kant. So this very, very elaborate language, playful language that she's obviously very, very drawn to. And but she twists it around and she has it as, this is what Henry and William said. Mayor Monsignor Henry and William cried to those who stood up to them in argument, and their words haven't died. So she's taken the lumps in the mashed potatoes bit, and then created this little fiction there. Yeah. So a very curious little poem, and what to make of these poems that borrowed from other texts. Okay, I should stop, but I'll say that tomorrow we begin our circle tour of Lake Superior, following in Niedecker's path. And Lake Superior is another of these very text-heavy poems. Niedecker prepared a vast number of notes for her own trip around Lake Superior, 260 typed pages of notes. And we will be traveling around Lake Superior with her notes. It's kind of great that she's done all the note-taking for us. And we will be consulting them very closely and using them to guide us on our travels. And yeah, who knows what we'll find. Thanks very much.
So, I can't help it. Do you hear in this million of lumps in your mashed potatoes anything about muffin?
Anything about?
Muffin proletariat?
Quite possibly, yeah. Given the embedded marks, yeah, why not? Yeah. Yeah, they live that, yeah. You know, that would be entirely typical. These poems are not arrived at easily. Huge amounts of labour go into, you know, she tells us that she spent 6 months on 4 lines of poetry. So these are, you know, they have something like that has quite a sort of flippant appearance to it, but in fact I think it's really tooled. So I like that, yeah. Yeah, really. Yeah.
Do you hope to turn the Lake Superior trip into a book project, or?
You know, the book project is waiting already. It's all those notes that really ought to be published in some form or other. One of the problems with them is that they're undated, and it's extremely difficult to sequence them. You can establish which of them she wrote after the trip, because they're references to the actual journey. But yeah, and they're a very varied collection of notes. There are these quite inscrutable little booklets that she created with brass pins, holding them together, and they are heavily cross-referenced to other documents, some of them that we can identify and some of them not. Yeah, it's so I think that at some point those definitely would need to be published. You know, it's occurred to me that the ideal form of publication would be online, in order to perhaps offer different organizations, right? So, yeah. But who knows what will come of this trip? I don't think we're hoping at least for photographs. We'll see where it goes from there. Yeah.
Are you going clockwise or counterclockwise?
We're going her way, which was clockwise. No, counterclockwise. Yeah. Yeah, they began. They pretty much started at Sault Ste. Marie, yeah, and went round back through Minnesota. Anyone done it? The Circle Tour. Her first title for the poem was actually Circle Tour, but she then changed that.
Yeah, now there's a magazine called Lake Superior that's dedicated to the Circle Tour. But mostly uninteresting.
Yeah. It'd be nice to think they got the Circle Tour from her, but maybe she got it from them.
I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
The use of found poetry, was that a common device that was used in that period of time?
Yeah, okay, that's an important question. Yeah, it was something the objectivists did. And Zukowski in 1931, in the poetry magazine issue that was so had such a profound effect on Niedecker, that she encountered this issue of poetry that had been guest edited by Louis Zukowski, and following her reading of that, she contacted him and So yes, it was something that Marion Moore was doing before Niedecker. It wasn't. She didn't. It wasn't. Her. She wasn't the first to do it. Marion Moore was doing it, and in the essay that Zukotsky writes in that issue of Poetry magazine, he refers to Marion Moore's use of other writings, and he says it's something like, it's a little bit of a riposte to the notion that poetry must be original, right? And it's like, there's all this good writing out there, why don't we reuse it? So, yeah. So, I mean, there wasn't a kind of recycling kind of notion back then, but it's that kind of thing. So a lot of the modernists did that. Ezra Pound did it a lot, but not in the way that she did, though. I mean, one of the things that she did that's so striking is that she used very unremarkable material. That lumps in the mashed potatoes thing is, I guess that is remarkable, but it's not very lofty material, right? She went to very kind of ordinary, sources. She liked little domestic touches and loved to mix the domestic with the philosophical. She had this term for her poetry, the conversational metaphysical, that I think accounts for that combination quite well. Yeah.
Would you be willing to read her poem, the Closed Post? I think it's in the grant.
I've got the wrong accent. That's such a great poem, that. I've tried to change my vowels when I read her, but it just doesn't work. Here we go. The clothesline post is set, yet no totem carvings distinguish the Niedecker tribe from the rest. Every seventh day they wash, worship sun, fear rain, their neighbors' eyes, raise their hands from ground to sky, and hang or fall by the whiteness of their all. I hadn't thought about that in the sort of new context of thinking about Aboriginal heritage and so on. I know in Canada, it's using the word totem is highly problematic out of its actual context. Right? A great poem, nevertheless.
Thank you, Jenny. Carl and Anna brought some original chapbooks from Woodland Pattern that are for sale. These are our pattern materials, and there's food and drink outside, so stay and look around and talk more, please.